2021 was a pretty crappy year, but not for movies. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Hope you're all doing well and hope you're all taking care of yourselves. My name is Sammy, and I am here to cap off the year talking about the 10 best movies that I saw this year in 2021. Before I hit you with the top 10, a couple of disclaimers. First of all, this is exactly this. This is my list. No one else's list. Mine. So you'll disagree, you'll agree. That's the fun of it. I want to know what you guys' top 10 is as well. Drop them in the comments if you so choose. Let's get into a little discussion. Second, I saw a lot of good movies this year. More than 10 good movies this year. There were a couple of films actually that I didn't get around to seeing. Licorice Pizza, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, just came out and I just haven't had a chance to go and see it. And Last Night in Soho, devastated that I missed that in theaters. I mean, it was in theaters, at least in my area, for honestly less than a month. I was getting ready to go see it, and then I just checked the Fandango app, and I'm like, it's not even playing in theaters anymore. Super bummed me out. And it's not going to be out on physical media until I think like mid-January, so I won't be able to watch it until then. But I have a feeling that if I had seen both of those movies, Licorice Pizza and Last Night in Soho, they might have made this list. Also, few runner-ups, few honorable mentions. I have a list of my honorable mentions displayed on screen right here in front of you. These are all movies that I had fun with, that were enjoyable, that were a great entertaining time, but that I just wouldn't consider good enough to put on the list. You know, I mean, you know what I mean. And I have a few runner-ups that just barely didn't make that top 10 spot. Those movies are King Richard, The Power of the Dog, and Lamb. King Richard was a great feel-good kind of family movie about the Williams, really honed in on Richard Williams, and Will Smith gave an incredible performance in the role. Great movie, just not great enough to make the list. The Power of the Dog was a very nuanced and subtle exploration of its lead character, themes of repressed homosexuality, people, or not people, but you know, the main character not wanting to embrace change. There were a lot of layers to the characters in that film, but at the end of the day, for me, it wasn't entertaining enough to be on a top 10 list. Very well made, but I mean, it's not a movie that I think I'm going to be like revisiting anytime soon, but I am glad that I watched it. And lastly, Lamb is the token trippy A24 movie of the year. I don't even really know how to start talking about that one. I won't talk about it too much, but it is a very moody, atmospheric, kind of shot on one location horror movie, but I even refrain from calling it a horror movie. It's based, a childless couple finds a weird-looking lamb newborn baby in their barn, and they take care of it. That's all I can say. I wanted to put it on this list, but at the end of the day, I didn't really find it substantial enough to go on the list, even if it was a good experience on its own. All right, and with all that out of the way, let's get into my top 10.
The test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Pain.
Bringing us into this list is going to be Dune. This film needs no introduction. It has been highly anticipated for years. It was helmed by one of the greatest living directors of our generation, Denis Villeneuve. I absolutely love the guy. I just showed my girlfriend Enemy the other night, and she told me it's probably her favorite movie that she's ever seen. So, man needs no introduction. He's an incredible director, and I am someone wholly unfamiliar with Dune's source material. Never touched any of the books, never read it, so I guess I didn't go into the movie already expecting something or hoping for something, but Dune for me was visually stunning. I think everybody can agree on that. I saw the film in IMAX, and it was quite the experience. Beyond just the visuals, it's a film that really brought me into the world of House Atreides and the Emperor, and it really sucked me into the atmosphere. It was never boring. It was surprisingly complex and layered. I'm sure the source material is as well, and even more so. But the film thoroughly entertained me. For 2.5 hours, it brought me into a world that I knew nothing about, and it intrigued me. I would love to put it higher on this list, but I can't because it's not a full movie. It ends really abruptly, and it's very clearly just a 2.5 hour trailer for what's to come. That being said, it's the best 2.5 hour trailer I've ever seen, which is why it gets a spot on this list.
Can anyone give me an example of a myth? or a story they're afraid of.
All right, and then coming in at number 9. This movie kind of fell a little bit flat for a lot of people who thought it was just too average and too simple and didn't do anything new and didn't break the mold or what have you, but I don't think every movie has to. Antlers I thought was a really interesting movie, and I'm kind of biased already towards films like this, like kind of nature horror, like, oh, careful, don't mess with Mother Nature, she'll come for you, which I guess is kind of why I wanted to put Lamb on the list. But Antlers, I think out of the two nature horror films I saw this year, is the better of the two. I really like how the story was told in that movie. There's this like inciting incident in the beginning. You know, the child, which by the way, the kid in this movie, I mean, he's a great actor. He's one of the better child actors that I've seen in a film. But you have this inciting incident with his father, and you don't really know what happened, and it's slowly revealed over the course of the movie. I really liked the narrative structure of the film. I think that's what drew me in the most, and is actually why it has a place on this list, because people who are complaining about the film, they're not wrong. It is kind of simple. It doesn't really dive as deep as maybe you want it to, but as an experience, it was thoroughly enjoyable for me. I liked seeing the mystery slowly unravel, even if it wasn't wholly unpredictable. It's atmospheric and creepy, and was directed by Scott Cooper, but produced by Guillermo del Toro, and you can see that it's got his touch all over it, especially with the creature design, which you don't see much of the creature, which is another complaint that people had, but again, I don't really care. Sometimes less really is more, and in the case of this film, I think less was more. The connection between the main child and the teacher who cares for him, I thought those themes of abuse were really well fleshed out. I think that was the best fleshed out point of the film, and I think it was smart to have that be the focus. You know, all in all, I mean, I really enjoyed Antlers.
You barely know me.
Oh, I know you're no good, and I know that because neither am I.
Next up, this one just came out in theaters. It was between this and Licorice Pizza for me to go watch, and I went and watched this. Nightmare Alley. Now, I have not read the book that this film is based on, nor have I seen the 1947 original film. I just saw this. I didn't know that this was coming out even until a few months ago. It is a tad bit overlong, but it is a very investing psychological thriller. It's this deconstruction of the main character, Stan Carlisle, as he delves deeper into greed and obsession and becomes infatuated with this power that he has. It's got some slick visuals, incredible production value. This one was directed by Guillermo del Toro, and you can also tell. I mean, it's got his name written all over the film. The set designs, everything was fully realized. I mean, this really felt like an old school kind of classic film noir, but with updated visuals. And you really don't see movies like this being made anymore. And I'm really glad that sometimes these jewels of film slip through the cracks. I've seen a lot of negative comments about this movie, and I mean, honestly, it baffles me. Yeah, it's almost 2.5 hours. I think it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. It is a tad bit over long. There are two very distinct halves, both of which maybe could have been shaved a little bit, but with a slow burn kind of psychological thriller like this, I don't mind the length, and I thought the ending was very good. I mean, it capped off the film perfectly. I mean, it was kind of the only way the movie could have ended. Incredible performances across the board. Bradley Cooper, I've always felt the guy's an amazing dramatic actor, and I'm glad this movie has turned more people on to Bradley Cooper as a dramatic actor. Cate Blanchett chews up every single scene she's in. Rooney Mara kind of gives like a subdued, understated performance, as is most of her roles, honestly. Toni Collette, always enjoy seeing her in anything. She's great. And yeah, I mean, I think this one is definitely worth your time. I'll be picking this up when it comes out on Blu-ray. When I went and saw it in the theater, there were only 4 other people with me. I mean, everyone was seeing Spider-Man No Way Home, and unfortunately, I think that movie's going to push Nightmare Alley and a couple others out of theaters, unfortunately. And I'm really glad that a film like this still exists in 2021. It was a really good experience. It's been a while since I've seen like a noir on this level of quality. Again, I'm baffled by all these comments from people saying it's bad and boring and messy and overlong and this and that. I mean, the only thing I can agree with is that it's a little bit too long, but that's it.
I am risking my life for you.
You are risking my life so you can save your pride.
All right, next up, one of two Ridley Scott movies that have come out this year. One of them was in my honorable mentions, and this one, The Last Duel. Excellent film. The setting and time period, first and foremost, fully realized. I mean, I was immersed into the world, into the setting of this film. The costume design was great. The visuals were great. Cinematography was awesome. And what really elevates this film, what really put it on this list for me, is the screenplay. The decision to tell the story from these three different perspectives was a clever one. And it could have fell flat, but it paid off. The film is about, anyone unfamiliar with The Last Duel, Ridley Scott has made some questionable remarks about why the film failed. Whatever, let the man do his thing. But it is, I gotta give credit where credit's due. It's a good movie. It takes place in the 1300s, where women at that time were like, unfortunately, nothing more than just like objects. And a woman claiming at that time period to have been raped and to want to see her abuser brought to justice was unheard of. So you have the story told from three different perspectives: from the perspective of the woman's husband, from the perspective of the man who raped the woman, and from the woman herself. And the movie was very smart to save her perspective for last, because her perspective is very obviously the truth. So until we get to that point, you see the two other perspectives from the two men, and it's kind of just a power struggle between them. I mean, the movie is very smart to be self-aware and say that, yeah, I mean, this is about two men fighting for their honor, essentially, instead of a woman who got raped. The movie is very self-aware, and it calls itself out on its ridiculousness of the true events that it's talking about. It's not just a made-up story. These are true events, and the film, like I said, was smart to realize that the whole premise is pretty ridiculous. But there's an excellent final battle at the end between the two main characters. Matt Damon and Adam Driver are great in this movie, as is Jodie Comer. Excellent performances across the board. Ben Affleck too was a surprise in this one with his like blonde wig and his little goatee. He was great. I liked him. He also kind of chewed up the scenery, playing this like sleazeball of a character who was friends with Adam Driver's character and tries to keep him out of trouble. The whole film was really well done, and a great time, and something that I can surely see myself revisiting.
This is how it starts. Just a fleeting thought.
You might want a piece of what I'm gonna do.
Then it builds.
What is that?
Set things straight.
Alright, coming up next is probably one of the more unique films on this list. The Card Counter, written and directed by Paul Schrader, a name that people probably haven't heard in a while. His claim to fame was writing the screenplays for some of Scorsese's greatest films, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull. I think he's directed one movie, First Reformed, but I haven't seen it. But I saw The Card Counter, and it is excellent. There's a very understated intensity to the film's cinematography. You'd be forgiven for calling the direction bland or boring, as I've heard it being called. It's a very polarizing film in that it is very subtle, very nuanced in its cinematography. I'm talking headshots, basically, like how you see me right now. It's just one shot, two shot, over the shoulder. I don't want to dive too deep into the cinematography, but if you were to just watch clips from this film, you would know what I mean. I mean, there's not anything flashy, there's not anything stylish to the way this film is shot, but yet, coupled with the dialogue and with the story that's being told, it is very intense, I think is the right word. It's maybe not the first word you would think of, but that's how I saw it. The film follows Oscar Isaac's character, William Tell, as he lives a life after his days of being a military interrogator in Abu Ghraib. And anyone who knows what went down in the unspeakable horrors that went down over there would instantly sympathize with William Tell's character. He looks to atone for his sins. He looks to make up for what he believes he's done wrong. He meets this kid who, his father was also one of the members stationed in Abu Ghraib, and with that connection formed, Oscar Isaac, he sees his path to redemption, essentially. The film really explores the weight of what his moral responsibility, or what he feels his moral responsibility is. And I thought it was explored very well. Like I said, very understated intensity to the way this film was shot. And the score also was, this is probably, I gotta really think, but this might be the best score / soundtrack of 2021 in a film. This is a very unique movie. The ending could leave some dissatisfied, but I thought it was perfect. I thought it was fitting. I didn't really see how else you could end the film, and it really brought the themes full circle. Great movie. Probably flew under a lot of people's radar this year, but I loved it. It's a textbook slow burn through and through. So, I mean, if that's not your kind of thing, you're not going to like this movie. It may not be as like fun or enjoyable or as a good time as other movies on this list, but it is just too well made to ignore.
The Black Panthers are forming a rainbow coalition of oppressed brothers and sisters of every color.
Neutralize him by any means necessary.
All right, coming up next, also maybe not as fun or enjoyable as other films on the list, but objectively well made and just too well crafted to not find itself a home on this list. Judas and the Black Messiah was an electrifying retelling of true events put to film. The lead performances by Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, they both absolutely disappear into their roles. The director clearly wants you to be infuriated that what went down in history went down, and he succeeds in this film. I mean, you watch the events go down and you wish that this was just like a narrative. You wish that this was just a fake story put to screen, but you see what happened in history, and it just angers you. And the film succeeds in spades at selling that anger, in telling the events of this film with such urgency as if they just happened yesterday. When in reality, this was a while back. Beyond just the performances, I mean, the writing and the direction of this film, like I said, electrifying, urgent, anger-inducing. This is a film that deserves at least one watch. You'd be forgiven for not wanting to watch it again. I mean, I probably will watch it again, but you'd be forgiven for not wanting to. But I think it's definitely a film that it's essential watching, I think. If any one movie came out this year that is absolutely essential viewing, it's Judas and the Black Messiah.
You were right.
You were right.
There's nothing.
There is nothing.
All right, next up. This was actually my #1 movie of the year for a while, but now it's at number 4, which tells you something about the quality of the upcoming 3 movies, huh? But The Night House is easily the best modern horror movie that I have seen in years. It is incredible. Rebecca Hall gives one of the best performances of her career, I think, as the lead character in this movie. The film really rests on her shoulders because the supporting cast is thin. There's only like 2 or 3 recurring supporting characters, and she really has to sell the meat of this movie, and she does, as she deals with her husband's abrupt suicide. And the narrative here is clever, it's methodical, it's intellectual. It doesn't tell you too much too early on. It doesn't spoon feed you information. The series of reveals as we get to the end I thought was perfectly well paced. It keeps you interested the whole time, and the outcome is something that you probably won't see coming. It's not completely out of left field. There is build up to it. There is stuff in the beginning that does make sense once you get to the end, but the film really engages the viewer intellectually. It doesn't take you for a fool. It doesn't take you for an impatient moviegoer. It lets its story unravel naturally, and by the end I thought the conclusion was wholly satisfying. I'm being kind of vague because I don't want to give away too much, but I don't want to give away too much about any of these movies. I think they all should be watched with a fresh, open eye, but I really enjoyed The Night House. I really think it's amazing. I don't think we're going to get another horror movie like this, for a while. I'm pretty picky when it comes to horror movies. I mean, I think like the slashers and fun movies like that, they have their place, but they're not like good movies, But The Night House is a true standout, and it's a movie that I've been recommending to a lot of people when they're asking me for horror movie recommendations. I think it's a film that's definitely worth your time. It's rewarding, I think. By the end, it may be a little bit like of anticlimactic ending, I guess, if you want to say, but it's satisfying. At least for me it was. It's thought-provoking. It really wants you to think. It throws out like typical jump scares and cliches and such in favor of real, methodical, clever, time-taking storytelling. Definitely worth a shot.
So how long would you say you've been experiencing symptoms?
Like a month. I can remember some things, but other things are just gone, like details. I can't do details.
All right, number 3, Little Fish. This is a movie that I had no clue existed, was never on my radar, anything. I was just scrolling through a movie group I'm in on Facebook and saw someone recommended this movie. Just made a post recommending, oh, Little Fish, it's on Hulu right now, you should watch it, it's great. He had mentioned the premise in his post, and I'm like, this kind of does seem like something I would like. It's a couple struggling to hold their relationship together in the midst of a global pandemic. Sound familiar? Except this pandemic is a memory loss virus that's spreading and doing exactly what a memory loss virus would do, making you lose your memory. So you can kind of see where the story goes, as this couple is just struggling to hold their love and their life together as the world essentially just crumbles around them. A film like this probably wouldn't be this high on my list, but this one is just so well acted and so well directed that it was impossible to ignore its power, its impact. The ending left me a wreck. It's tough to watch. It will ignite some tears in the viewer, but like other movies on this list, I really do think that it's one you should devote an hour and a half to. It's not that long of a movie. You just watch it, you experience it. It's not overly melodramatic. It's not overly sad. It doesn't ever stumble over its own ambition, I guess, over its own narrative. It never forgets the core relationship that it's about. And for that is what makes it so successful, because it very easily could have meandered and added to the lore of the virus and such, but it really is just about this couple struggling to hold their relationship together. And that's what makes it so impactful, so powerful, and that's what makes the ending so emotionally resonant.
You made the right choice, being out there in the woods. There's nothing here for you anymore. There's really nothing here for most of us.
All right, number 2. This one was a surprise for me. Pig, starring Nicolas Cage, who absolutely melts into his role as a secluded truffle hunter who lives in the wilderness with his pig. On the surface, this film could be seen as just like a John Wick ripoff. Guy loses his pig and he goes on a quest to retrieve it. But that's where the similarities to John Wick end. This movie uses its unique narrative to completely subvert expectations at every turn, and it's a touching reflection on love, on loss, on grief, on how we process grief and how we deal with the loss of loved ones. There are some standout dialogue scenes in this film. I don't even really want to allude to them. I mean, this is one that I think you deserve to go in blind to this movie, because if you go in already like knowing certain things, it's just not as rewarding. But the core dynamic between the main characters in this film was so sweet. I mean, by the end of this movie, like, I was on the edge of tears. Like, it was super powerful, super impactful. Every time you think the movie's gonna go one way, it goes the other. That's probably like as deep as I want to go into talking about the narrative. But I mean, Pig is definitely one. If you saw the trailer, if you heard about the premise and thought, oh, it's just a wannabe John Wick, I promise you couldn't be more incorrect. Definitely check this one out. It is amazing. I've seen it. I saw it twice. I'll definitely be watching it more times, but I gotta be in the right mood for it, because it is a very powerful movie. You take in every line of dialogue. Your eyes are glued to the screen. It's a very visually stunning movie too. The cinematography is very attractive. I don't know how else to say it, but the lighting, the scenery, the shots in this movie really are the perfect pair to the actual story that's being told.
Another year nearly gone already. You must seek him out.
Was it not just a game?
Perhaps, but it is not complete.
All right, and number 1, the number 1 best movie that I saw this year, the most engaging, the most impactful, the most enjoyable movie that I saw this year. The Green Knight is, I feel like I've used the word incredible for like every single movie on this list. Phenomenal, I guess is what I'll say. The Green Knight is another visually stunning masterpiece that explores what it means to be a man. It's an introspective take on what the hero's journey typically entails. I mean, it's a fantasy epic about Sir, they say his name in the movie, but I mean, I'm still gonna butcher it. Gawain. That's how I'm saying. I think it's Gawain. Sir Gawain. As a knight who, or not even as a knight yet, but he's this brash, immature child in the beginning of the movie, and the film takes us on a journey with him as he wrestles and grapples with what he thinks he wants from the world versus what he thinks he has to do with his life. The Green Knight carries grand visual spectacle alongside this introspective journey that Sir Gawain takes. And it's a fantastical journey through and through, with so much in the film being left open to interpretation. Not everything you see here is meant to be taken like literally. Not everything you see in the film, not everything that transpires you're supposed to look at and be like, oh, okay, so this happened the way that I'm seeing it on screen. It's a fantasy, and it uses that genre to its advantage to tell these interpretive tales. I mean, there's very distinct chapters and trials in the film that he goes through. And you gotta always remember watching this film that it is a fantasy. The things you're seeing are provoking thought. They really want you to think. They're not showing these scenes necessarily to tell you what happened. It's a folk tale. It's a fantastical journey. It's an epic. There are so many shots in this movie that are burned in your head. I mean, long after the credits roll. There's one shot in particular that the first time I saw the film, I mean, to this day, I probably think about this shot like at least once every single day. I'm not going to say it to you, of course, but this film, if you are in the right headspace for it, there's a lot of people that didn't like this because they thought it was too much of a deconstruction of the source material. It was too pretentious, you know, whatever. But I mean, those kinds of people, I guess the nicest way I can put it is that with that mindset, there's just so many films that are just going to fly over people's heads. I mean, I'm not trying to sound elitist. I'm not trying to sound better than anyone else, of course, but I really think that movies like this have their place. I mean, not everything needs to be literal. Not everything needs to be fed to you. By the time this movie's over, you'll probably have a lot of questions, but the more you think about it, the more you'll answer those questions in your own head because it's meant to be interpreted by the viewer. But there's still a very clear journey that Gawain takes as he wrestles with his ambition, with what he wants from the world, what it means to be a man, to be a knight, to have honor. Most of these obstacles he faces, I mean, despite being told externally, are very internal trials that he's going through as he wrestles with his morals. There's themes of bravery and honor. I think I already said that. I'll just be repeating myself if I talk about this movie anymore, but I did want to devote a little bit more time to it than the others on this list. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what more to say about this one in particular. The most impactful movie I've seen this year for sure. I mean, this film flabbergasted me. That's the best way I can put it. I even watched it again the other night just to make sure that I wasn't like still riding the high from the first time. Just to make sure that it still is as good as I remember that it deserves to be number one on the list. And I was it was been an exhausting long ass week at work. So I didn't finish the movie. I was starting to fall asleep, so I'm like, fuck, whatever, I'll finish it another time. But the whole time when I was watching it and I was awake and alert, I was like, yeah, this is the best movie I've seen all year, for sure. It has it all. There's visual spectacle. There's thought-provoking themes. It's an attractive narrative. I was drawn into everything about this film. From its opening shot to its final closing image. Everything was perfect. There's a sequence at the end of the film, which I won't go into detail about, but that sequence is probably one of the best sequences of like any film that I have ever seen in my entire life. It's amazing. So yeah, these are the 10 best movies that I saw this year. There are a lot more great films that I saw as well beyond just the honorable mentions and the runner-ups, but there can only be 10 solid picks for this list. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think of my picks, and I'm curious to hear your picks as well. So drop it in the comments below. Thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate each and every single one of you. And until next time, peace out, take care, and Happy New Year.